Good morning, students. As in our previous videos, we discussed a lot about biodiversity, causes of biodiversity loss, patterns of biodiversity. In the same series, today I will discuss that we have to conserve this biodiversity. Now, you may ask that what are the reasons for conservation of the biodiversity? You may ask that why we should have to conserve biodiversity. So, I will tell you that there are three reasons for which we have to conserve our biodiversity. First reason, we are narrowly utilitarian. The second reason why we are broadly utilitarian. And the third reason, there are some ethical arguments related to the conservation of the biodiversity. Now, you will be amazed that sir is saying that we are narrowly utilitarian of the biodiversity. How we are narrowly utilitarian and how we are broadly utilitarian? So I will tell you that why we are I am saying that we are narrowly utilitarian of the biodiversity. So here in the slide you can see that why we are narrowly utilitarian. Why utilitarian means we are closely related, narrowly closely related. We have to say narrowly means we are closely, and utilitarian means we are, and biodiversity is providing us utility, or we are providing various services which are very close to us or directly related to us. So how I am telling you that sometimes the biodiversity is directly giving up economical wealth or economical benefits. So how I am telling you that because the biodiversity is the only factor which is providing us food in the form of the cereals, pulses, fruits, or I have to say that sometimes egg or milk or meat also. As well as the biodiversity is providing us the firewood. Biodiversity is providing us different plants which are providing us different kinds of fiber. Biodiversity is providing us different insects which are helping us to produce different kinds of fibers. Due to the biodiversity, there are various medicinal plants are there which are providing us medicines. Okay, through biodiversity we are getting different kinds of construction materials, as well as we are also getting the raw materials for the various industries. So here we are observing six different factors, or six different utilities which are given us by the which are provided us by the biodiversity. So that's why I am saying that we are narrowly utilitarian of biodiversity, so we must have to go for the conservation of the biodiversity. Second, you can say that we are broadly utilitarian. How can I say that we are broadly utilitarian? So I have to say that biodiversity is providing various kinds of ecosystem services. How I am telling you that? First, as we all know that the Amazon rainforest, which was initially 14% cover of earth surface or biodiversity, right now, as I mentioned earlier also, only the 6% of the area of earth is covered by the Amazon rainforest. And you also know that these are referred as the lungs of the planet too, because there are the most greenery or most vegetations are there, and which are helping in the purification of air or formation of, or I have to say that liberation of oxygen gas during the process of the photosynthesis. Okay, and you will be amazed that Amazon rainforest produce 20% of the total oxygen in the atmosphere on the earth. यानी कि इस अर्थ की टोटल जितनी ऑक्सीजन बन रही है उसका अकेले 20% अमेजोन रेन फॉरेस्ट बना रहा है. ठीक है, so that's why we have to conserve the biodiversity. Second, as we know that pollination is must for the cereals, for the fruits, or for the different kinds of vegetation, and this pollination is done with the help of the various pollinating agents. Especially I am talking about the biotic agents, and these are various kinds of insect like bees, various kinds of birds, as well as the various kinds of mammals like bats. Okay, so they are helping in the pollination process, so that's why we have to conserve them. Otherwise we will not have pollination, and we will not get sufficient amount of the food as well as the biodiversity. So we have to conserve it. And the third one, we are also getting some aesthetic pleasure from the biodiversity. While we are walking around the forest, while we are walking around the garden, we are walking around the pastures, we are walking around a thick wood, while we are watching the beauty of the nature, beauty of the spring, beauty of the flower, it gives us pleasure and a very good feeling. So that's why we have to protect biodiversity. So there are three regions or three ecosystem services which are broadly provided by the biodiversity. So that's why we have to go for the conservation of biodiversity. And the last one, why we should have to conserve biodiversity, because there are some ethical arguments. Now what are these ethical arguments? One by one I will tell you that. As we know that there are millions of the species of the plants and animals as well as the microbes which are surviving in this earth, and each species on the earth has some intrinsic value. As I mentioned earlier in my earlier videos, each species is very important, and there is very much importance of each species in the earth, and that's why we have to conserve them, because it's our moral duty that we should have to take care of all the living creatures and pass on our biological legacy in good order to future generation, because our future generation may curse ourselves, or our future generation will definitely curse us because they enjoyed all the natural beauty. They will definitely say that our mm, ancestors enjoyed the natural beauty, they utilized all the resources, they utilized all the animals, but they haven't left all these plants as well as the animals for us. So that's why for our future generation we must have to conserve biodiversity. So these are the three different reasons why we have to conserve biodiversity. Now next slide I will tell you that how can we conserve biodiversity. So I am telling you two different methods for the conservation of biodiversity. In the first method is called as in situ conservation, and the next method is called ex situ conservation. Now what is the difference between in situ and ex situ conservation? I am telling you that. Initially I am talking about in situ conservation. So, in situ conservation refers to the conservation and protection of the whole ecosystem, protection of its biodiversity at all levels. I am giving a very common example. In the most of the cases, we are observing that the most of the biodiversity occurs in the forest. If we are conserving the whole forest, so definitely we are going to conserve various species of the plants, animals, insects, or all the living organisms which are surviving over there. So this is called in situ conservation. It means we are conserving whole biosphere or whole ecosystem. ठीक है, तो for example we have different biosphere reserves, national parks, wildlife sanctuaries, sacred groups, where in their local habitat or their native habitat we are conserving the whole habitat, means we are leaving them to live in their natural condition. So this kind of conservation is called uh, in situ conservation. While in ex situ conservation, as we are observing, and as I mentioned earlier, that there are various species which are threatened species, which are endangered species, or which are vulnerable species, means there is a very great risk over them of the extinction. So what we have to do, we can remove them from their natural resources, and we can make a artificial habitat for them, and we can conserve them in that particular artificial habitat. For example, various zoological parks are there where we are conserving animals, ठीक है, in the artificial habitat which is very much similar to their natural habitat, and we are taking care of them. We are going for their breeding, feeding, disease control, and we are observing them in regular basis, and we are going to conserve them in our artificial way, I have to say that. Similarly, plants are conserved in botanical gardens, ठीक है, as well as the biological safari, wildlife safaris are there in where the living organisms are going to be conserved. So there are two methods in situ conservation as well as ex situ conservation. In situ conservation, we are observing that we are conserving living organism into their natural habitat, while in ex situ conservation we are protecting animals as well as plants in a artificial habitat. ठीक है, and finally I will talk about the convention on the biodiversity. So for conservation of the biodiversity, various conventions were held. So initially earth summit was held in Rio de Janeiro in 1992. Then the second world summit was held on Johannesburg in South Africa in 2002 for the sustainable development, and in that particular summit in Johannesburg, 190 countries participated, and they pledged there that all the countries will work for the for reducing the current rate of the biodiversity loss at global level, regional level, and local level by 2010. Means this pledge that till today, from today onwards till 2010, all the countries will work to reduce the biodiversity loss rate, which is very quick, as I mentioned earlier in my previous video, and they pledged for the reduce in biodiversity loss rate. So I am concluding myself today. I hope so you understood how can we conserve biodiversity and why we have to conserve biodiversity. Still, if you have any query, please ask. Thank you. Bye bye and have a nice day.